Hey, welcome back to another video of the Immersive World's Handbook. Today I'm coming from Wonderland, Imaginative Cuisine, on board Royal Caribbean's Wonder of the Seas, as you can see with Central Park behind me. This is an amazing ship that has more than I've ever seen on a cruise ship, particularly in terms of theming, so be sure to watch some of those other videos I have. But today I want to focus specifically on Wonderland, which, as you can get from the name and also the theming around you, you're going to see the Mad Hatter's hat on the elevator here, on quite a few elevators. You're going to see the rabbit over here, kind of a little off camera. But so this restaurant obviously uses Alice in Wonderland as a thematic device to deliver its cuisine and its experiences. So I specifically want to focus on an experience my wife and I had the other night here at Wonderland. Really neat, as they say, imaginative, innovative cuisine. But I want to specifically focus on the elements of theming at the restaurant and talk about maybe some areas where there could be improvements. Anytime you use a theme, whether it's in this case a literary theme or a more general theme. When you turn around to Central Park, of course, we're getting a much more kind of place-based theme that's very generalized and so forth. But when you look at what's happening here at Wonderland, you'll see that it's actually based on a literary type theme. So we're going to be talking about that, the ways in which it was successful, the ways in which it was unsuccessful, and really have a conversation about what is going on in this super unique restaurant, which is one of the specialty restaurants here aboard Wonder of the Seas. So let's start our journey. All right, so we're taking a look here at some of my photos, and initially I think the thing you notice about Wonderland is how cool the decor is and the fact that they are trying to create something imaginative. I'll talk in just a second about how the storyline does or does not maybe relate to the dining experience. But one of the things you get on a Royal Caribbean cruise, and certainly in all their specialty restaurants, is a high attention to detail in terms of the food, the service, and of course the decor. Of all the restaurants on Wonder of the Seas, this is the one that is like truly themed and has kind of a theme space approach to it. Azumi, which I'll mention later, is a Japanese restaurant, but other than the food and the culture, it doesn't have a lot of like story kind of built into the foundation of the space itself. And so I have to give props to Royal Caribbean and to the creators of the Wonderland restaurant, because as you see here, as you go through the door, has this very liminal, I think, a Victor Turner perspective as you go through the passageway and you're transformed. And then you see the Mad Hatter here, and we'll talk about him in just a bit. So one of the things that's pretty cool about this restaurant is they have an emphasis on performance, and the Mad Hatter, indeed, not Alice so much. And we were kind of slightly disappointed by Alice not performing much at all. She kind of was the hostess. These are some of the specialty drinks, so you can get some molecular or specialty imaginative cocktails, not unlike maybe another molecular place you might visit, like Alinea in Chicago, which I'll mention later. And I should say I'm saying molecular, but really, I don't know if I'd call Wonderland a molecular gastronomic experience. There's some playful stuff going on with the food. You get some foams. I'm trying to remember if you get spherification. We'll stop here a second to hear his narrative.
Is that a dog or a cat?
It's a dog, but like what I've said, he never bark and he never bite. He's safe.
I like that dog.
Only meowing.
Oh yeah, didn't bite. You try. You try.
See? He's never bark and never bite. He's very nice.
Super cool. And one of the things we liked was that he was so playful. He was a great host, and he was really the main character who, interacted with the kids. He made these amazing balloon animals and so forth. You're seeing here one of the initial techniques. And by the way, as I was recording this, some of my video camera footage didn't come out, so some of it did, some of it did not. But that was one technique that you saw there in terms of the imaginative cuisine. Here's another. So kind of a play with the menu. I'll talk a little bit later about Moto, the closed restaurant in Chicago, where you have an edible menu. In this case, in Wonderland, you have essentially a bottle of water or a vessel of water, and you reveal your menu over time, and in this case, my footage did come out. So this is kind of fun and imaginative. I could definitely think that this would be very popular with kids, with parents. Maybe it's a way for the kids to kind of, relax and keep them busy, like the old coloring book pages you get at Denny's and those kind of places, or Cracker Barrel. Now, I asked here ChatGPT, I said, what are some thematic things from Alice in Wonderland that you would think of, playing a role in a themed restaurant? I did not mention Wonderland. And of course, I came up with the Queen of Hearts and the Mad Hatter, the Cheshire Cat, Alice, of course, Going Down the Rabbit Hole, A Tea Party, etc. So one of the things that I guess is a critique for me about Wonderland here, and again, this is on Wonder of the Seas, but it also appears in other Royal Caribbean restaurants, is it's trying very hard, I think, with this theme to kind of take you into this experience. And again, the menu bit as we're watching my video, I think is fun, and we're getting more of the Mad Hatter, who's doing some of his balloon stuff, and he was the best part, really, of, I think, the restaurant. So they're trying very hard, I think, to create this story, but I don't know if they really execute Alice in Wonderland enough, aside from the decor and really one character. When you meet the waitstaff, they're very formal. They sort of have that old school, I think they're primarily male, if I remember. I could be wrong on that, but they have that old school kind of classic steakhouse vibe where they're very professional. They don't break kind of the fourth wall. They're very much focused on explaining the menu to you. And indeed, here's that one of the sample menus you can look at online, and they divide it into these different courses with fire, ice, and so forth. And one of their things is the waiter approaches your table, and you'll see some video of the waiter in a bit. And we had a great waiter, of course, but what they try to do is they say, we're going to kind of custom tailor the experience to your likings. And so as you watch the other guests at Wonderland, everyone's getting different food. Some people are getting maybe different appetizers than you are. So they sort of say to you that what they're going to do is trying to customize your experience for your preferences and so forth, based on maybe some of the things you've seen in the menu. I don't know if they really do that, or if that's more the notion that they sort of bring to that experience at Wonderland. But nonetheless, I would definitely say, great wait staff and definitely attention to detail and trying to make your experience good. So now we're starting to see just some of the food experiences we had. Again, it really varied based on sort of your preferences and what they happened to bring out. In some cases, it felt more like they brought stuff out and just said, hey, try this and try this, which I actually thought was kind of fun, because it gives you, kind of like with a tasting menu, more of an opportunity to experiment and try new things. This was a deconstructed caprese, and I thought some of this was good visually. This was maybe one of the most stunning dishes. Flavor-wise, as I'll talk about later, it wasn't necessarily maybe amazing, but visually I thought with the plating and just with how they created this kind of very almost like a painting on your plate. It was very imaginative in that sense. And I will say, if you eat at Wonderland, definitely have to leave yourself maybe upwards of 3 hours. This was a deviled egg on kind of a bird's nest. Nothing spectacular in terms of the flavors, but very visually stimulating. So just remember that if you decide to eat at Wonderland, to leave yourself a lot of time. It's not the kind of place that you just go and quickly grab a bite to eat. This was, I believe it was a spicy shrimp that was kind of also in a haystack, and I forget, there was some type of sauce on there. Some of this, and you see the waiter, he's very attentive and very good. The bussers, everyone was great in the restaurant. This was another kind of one bite. It was I believe some caviar, and maybe it was like a salmon mousse on there. I'm totally forgetting the menu. So you can definitely look up the menu online if you decide to go, but just kind of showing you the pictures and what the experience was like. This was a crab, a stuffed lollipop, if you will, ice cream cone, and it had like a mousse on top, which was avocado. Good, very imaginative to look at on the plate. Would not say totally amazing, as I'll mention later. I think a lot of reviews of Wonderland get into the idea that the food looks really cool and innovative, but it's not necessarily like, stick to your ribs type of food. This was more like an amuse-bouche, like kind of a palate cleanser. It had a lot of, there was basil in there, there was a lot of lemon, and it was really a nice palate cleanser, which an amuse-bouche, of course, is. Between courses. Here's another one coming up. These are our mains, actually. So my wife Krista ordered a baked fish. I think maybe it was made in parchment paper. And there was a sauce there. It wasn't necessarily something that when I tried it, it wasn't like totally amazing. I had the short rib. Very good. They had different sauces on the side, a little tiny puree of potatoes. The meat was super tender and well cooked. Now, we've been to these other molecular gastronomic restaurants, and again, this is Alinea in Chicago. If you know Grant Achatz, his work, absolutely amazing, like the best restaurant we've ever eaten at, both in terms of the experience and also in terms of the taste. And this shows you kind of the plating at Alinea. And Alinea is definitely an expensive experience. It can be upwards of $400 per person if you don't buy the wine. I'm trying to remember the price, as we're going to look at in a second here. Another molecular restaurant in Chicago closed, sadly, and there's kind of a sad backstory with it if you know anything about their chef. There's that one menu, edible menu I mentioned. So this was also a molecular gastronomic restaurant, and this one was not as expensive as Alinea. I want to say it was more like at the time, I think in 2011, maybe 100, 150 a person. Of course, throw in your tip later. There's a little Cracker Jack. These are very quick, but that was also, I believe, edible. So if you eat at Wonderland on any of the Royal Caribbean ships that have it, I want to say it's between $40 and $60, and it's considered a specialty restaurant. So obviously there's the edible menu at Moto again, which didn't taste amazing, but was a cool concept if you think about edible ink printers that are available. Just coming up here, I found a couple of reviews online of the Wonder of the Seas restaurant going back to Wonderland. And, a lot of divided opinions. Some people absolutely love it. I'll talk about later, you certainly should try it if it's your thing, if you want to try something new. I think the gist of these reviews are, some people say, like, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You would never go back again because the menu doesn't seem to, from what I've seen online, rotate as much. Here's the short rib again, which was a really good, definitely a nice umami flavor to the meat. Showing a little more here of me taking pictures, and again, for some reason, my camera that I was wearing had my iPhone and then my DJI on my neck. The strap wasn't high enough, so it doesn't really get the top of the food, which defeats the purposes of having two cameras. So fortunately, I took these photos. But as I was saying earlier, I think if you want to try something different and new as an experience, give this restaurant a shot. This is one of their desserts. It was that is a beautiful looking plate of food. It was a very nice, not too sweet tea. It's reminding me of a Japanese tea cake on the inside. It kind of was a pink, I think, tea cake. Had that flavor. It wasn't too sweet. And then the one that was really our favorite, which I'll do in slow-mo here, was this, I think it was called The World, and it's this chocolate dessert, and I did it in slow-mo here. As you can see, it's very performative. This was probably the highlight of the meal. So you have this kind of cold sphere of chocolate, or maybe it's room temperature, and then when he puts the hot caramel on top, it creates this kind of, the globe disintegrates, and then that all just falls on your plate. So this was definitely a highlight of eating at Wonderland, and if all the cuisine were like these desserts, I would say like they would have a total hit. I just think some of the things that they have to think about would be the quality of the food. Again, it all tasted good, but there was nothing memorable. There was nothing that was better than some of the other food we had in other specialty restaurants, and then our specialty dining, which I'll talk about in my sweets video, which was called the Coastal Kitchen. So you just kind of, have to ask yourself, do you want to eat there, or would you choose, in this case, Azumi or another specialty restaurant? So we enjoyed Azumi. I think it was a similar price point, but this was more a la carte, And we just thought the food was great. There wasn't really theming or that kind of Alice in Wonderland type of foundational narrative, but really great service, great food, and we just felt like it was a much better dining experience overall than Wonderland was. So I think my tip for you is when you're thinking about any specialty restaurant, if you're going cruising, to think about what you like. If you want an experience, again, I recommend Wonderland. I don't think you'll be disappointed if you go. You just might not be blown away. We were really blown away by Azumi and Coastal Kitchen and some of the other food that we tried aboard Wonder of the Seas, Royal Caribbean, but we weren't necessarily blown away by this experience. So again, stuff for you to consider on your next cruising experience. So that's going to be it today here, talking about Wonderland, the use of a literary theme of Alice in Wonderland to deliver what they call imaginative cuisine. I certainly found the experience to be really neat, unique, innovative, opportunities for improvement as well, to think about some aspects in which theming is used. So I appreciate you listening. Come back for additional videos here on board Royal Caribbean's Wonder of the Seas and other videos here for the Immersive World Handbook.